Hello and welcome to another Abundant Living Ecuador episode on YouTube. And today we are once again featuring a professional spotlight for our health and wellness edition. I have the honor and privilege to sit with my dear friend, Alaya Chikly, and we'll be speaking a lot about Alaya's background, what I'll say your masterful craft that you have as a healer, as a practitioner, and before we even do that, I'll say this is another fun announcement about the health and wellness retreat that we have in October that's coming up. So Alaya will be part of the health and wellness retreat. We can talk a bit about that, what that might look like for your workshops, how you'll participate in the retreat. But first, I'd love to get to your story and your background and really the why behind your work.
The why behind my work.
Yeah, I know. So I'd love to give a little introduction here, and if I get anything wrong, you can set me straight. But do I have permission to brag about you for a bit here? Because I feel like I need to. I would like to.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. So you're the founder of Heart-Centered Therapy, and a lot of our conversation will be around what that modality is. But Heart-Centered Therapy is a very profound practice. You practice it on clients, individual patients, and also train people in this methodology as well. And I know over the past 30 years, there's been over 2,500 students that have come through the Heart-Centered Therapy training. You've practiced or you've trained in 12 different countries, and this is translated into 5 different languages, this work. So for me, it feels like there's a universal force that's self-evident with the work that Alaya does. And many people can relate to this, even not in English, not in your primary language. There's something human and universal that's very relatable. And I'll also say part of the Chikly Institute, a lot of your work comes through that with your husband, Bruno Chikly, who I had the privilege of interviewing very recently, who will also be part of the health and wellness event in October, which is amazing. It's always so nice to see two couples with different modalities, but a weaving together of that. So I know you two have been working together, different modalities sometimes, and occasionally in partnership too. So that's wonderful. And I also, my last big bragging point here is that I know there are all different types of practitioners, healers in the medical field and spiritual field who use this heart-centered therapy. So everything from medical doctors, osteopaths, Ph.D s in psychology, physical therapists, occupational therapists, and massage therapists worldwide use these modalities as part of their practice and integrate it into their methods. So all of that said, I would love to hand it over to you in a moment after I remind our audience here. If you're interested in video content like this, just make sure you subscribe to the Abundant Living YouTube channel, you like this video, and you hit the bell. That way you get notifications when we have more amazing interviews like the one we're about to have right now.
Okay.
All right. So all of that said, I feel wherever it feels like a natural, easy place for you to start to share about heart-centered therapy and really yourself and the why behind your work.
The why behind my work.
Yeah.
My life has been the evolution of my work. And I would like to tell my personal story because then you can give an understanding
Yeah.
about the depth and how much it means to me. As a little girl, of course, my mother and father were married. My mother was not in love. She felt entrapped. And when I was 3, she was having an affair. And she told my father, and he was so upset that he tried to kill her. But she screamed, and the neighbors came, and
Wow.
it was stopped. And the next day she left. She forgot to take us. She wanted out.
Wow.
And I understand that she was young and beautiful. And with that, my father took us to Washington to his mother so that we could survive and he could find work. And this is when I started to understand, I mean, as I look back on my life, how our lives are so deeply imprinted and how in our hearts we want to be connected to our mothers and our fathers. And sometimes what we do is we match their traumas, we match their pain and their decisions about life. And on this journey from Los Angeles to Washington State, I had a little kitty that through their fighting I would hold on to, and I loved my little kitty, right? It's just like I could sleep and hold her and I would feel safe. So I took my kitty everywhere, and on the road the first night, we stopped at a bathroom so my sister and I could use the bathroom. And in the morning, I woke up and my little kitty was gone.
I was cringing at where the story is going. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. How old were you at the time?
I was 3,
You were 3.
just
Okay.
3. And of course, I cried and I cried and I
Yeah.
said, Daddy, Daddy, please, please, we have to go back. It's my kitty.
Yeah.
Stuffed animal, but it was my kitty. And he said, no, no, we can never go back. And years later, I understood that what was happening is that I was learning what it felt like to love something so deeply and to lose it and to feel pain over the loss and never be able to go back. So, what I was doing was imprinting through my father's experience what is love. Love is loss and love is pain.
Yes, what love is and what love isn't too.
Yes.
And what seemed that perceived it is and it is not was your reality, that young
Yes.
age and that imprint.
It's deep.
Yep.
It was very
Mhm.
deep.
Yeah.
So we, life went on and they both remarried when I was 5. And my father married this incredibly loving Italian woman that is, her heart was bigger than the earth. So I got the blessing.
Wow.
I got the blessing. And that they were married 7 years and he fell in love with someone else. And he divorced my stepmother and he wanted to be with this other woman and she changed her mind and he took a gun and he shot her and he killed himself. She did not die. The bullet lodged in her neck. I'm learning more about love.
Mhm.
Love is violence. Love is scary.
And this was at 7 years old.
This is 12 now.
You're 12. Okay.
12 years
Okay.
old.
Yes.
So at 12 years old, when my father died, I know that when I was told in the middle of the night that I felt like a part of my essence was evaporating. I could feel I was leaving. And then about 2 months later, I was raped by 2 drug addicts. So at 12 years old, I was in a place where my hopes and my dreams were shattered, and I had no future. I had no reference points of trust or love or safety. So this was my ground in which I spent the rest of my younger years until I was 28. And of course, because of the negativity that I was holding, there was a time where I felt I could see that I was moving through an opportunity to leave this planet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I went to the ocean and I stood before the sea. And I felt, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. And I heard this voice that said, no, you will not die. And my thought was, well, I have no resources. I have nothing to turn to. I have no strength. I don't know what to do. And I remembered a friend had said to me, Chiyoko, he said, if you don't believe in anything, use the word if. So I took that and I said, if there is a divine universe, then I am talking to you. Please help me. Please help me. I'll do anything. Just please don't make me be a preacher.
That you added that part into it
Yes.
too. Okay, that was in there. This is the experience. I'm very present with your experience. I feel bits of the story I knew and much of it I did not. And I just feel like this is a movie unfolding right now. So please share what came next. What was that next chapter for you?
Well, a miracle.
Wow.
It's like my prayer, the only thing I can say certainly was not sophisticated, but it was sincere.
The authenticity was there. Yeah, it was your heart.
My heart was there,
Yeah.
and I did want to live. And within 24 hours, I had been directed to go to the store, buy kosher salt, put a lot of it in the bathtub,
Okay.
and some on the outside, holding
uh-huh.
the space, 2 white candles, and a Bible, which took some looking, and and a white washcloth.
Okay.
And this woman gave me a prayer to say, and I wrote it on this little tiny piece of paper. And I was in the bathtub, and again, I was in a sincere state. And this prayer was to Jesus.
Yes.
And I asked, I read this prayer and I was asking for Jesus to support me to cleanse my body, my mind, and my soul. And I remember the tears and the sincerity and the washing and the hope, that there was hope. And the last thing I did was I took the washcloth and I put it over the top of my head. And in that moment, there was a light that shot through me, Chiyoko. There was such a force from the front of the bathtub. I shot to the back, and my back was against the back of the bathtub. And I laid there, and the water was sloshing. And I was laying there, and I was quiet, and then the water was still. And what was so amazing in that moment is that I realized that there was a divine universe.
Yep. That was answered for you.
Yes,
It was shown to you.
that no more if,
Yep. Yes, it was known.
no more if.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I knew it to my core, and I knew I had a soul. If anything had left me throughout my lifetime, if I had evaporated into nothingness,
Mm-hmm.
I was filled. I was absolutely filled with light, and I was guided. And what I received as my guidance was turn off the TV, don't listen to music with words, and to start to meditate in order to be able to listen to the guidance. And if I could listen to the guidance, I would be guided to be able to heal myself and to share the healing with others.
Mm-hmm.
And
Interesting about that last part. I'm thinking about the preacher request to not be a preacher, but we'll get there. We'll get to the others in a moment. And I was thinking, I wonder how that worked out. So let's come back to you though. So you have this realization for yourself, the healing within. I'm picking up so many threads that we can come back to as we talk about your work that you do today.
Yes.
But in this moment, I love this backstory where, wow, to have that, could be considered universal knowledge of you are able to heal yourself.
Yes.
Yes. Tell
Yes.
me a bit about that, if that feels good or.
My gosh, what I learned was that each one of us, have the resource, and that my heart was the anchor. That if I was in my heart each day, and I meditate still 2 to 3 hours a day, and I'm telling you, this is a lot of years later, because I was given a second chance. I was given a gift. So I take it seriously and I love it. I wake up every morning excited.
Yeah, she really does. I see her at the farmer's market. I'm like, not in my pajamas, but it's 8 a.m. and the hair is everywhere, and you are just bright eyed. And every time I see you, you actually lift my spirit up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you bring this energy of, I can just tell you're excited to be alive. And I know some people would think that's a little bit of a silly thing to say, or can that really be true? But for me, knowing you personally, I feel that. There's an authentic joy that you have. And I think people around you, like when you're around something bright and light, you can't help but lean towards the light. And your brightness rubs off on other people. And so I feel that from you.
I sincerely care.
Yes, you do. You take it
True.
seriously.
Every person I see is important,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
that's a part of our community. And that's what I like to bring as also a part of my gift.
And you had that realization. So now this was back in about 28, you said, right?
Yes.
And did these realizations all happen in that moment, or were you able to integrate some of them and have deeper realizations? Did it take years?
I knew by the time I got out of the bathtub, that was my guidance.
Okay.
And I was very excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what was interesting is that all the friends I had, all the places I visited, disappeared. Like it was like the world disappeared and I was in a new reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I said next chapter. That's the understatement of the lifetime here. It sounds to me like you were catapulted into a next plane of existence, whatever the words might be, to be. I don't want to say you were an inauthentic self before, but you were just the next version of you, and it was a radically different place energetically than the previous version
That's
of
right.
you. Yeah. So you're, about to be in your 30s. And did this work come to you right away, how to help other people, or did you continue on your own journey?
No, I continued on my own journey,
Yeah.
and I just saw things were just dropping from me. Right. And I kept learning and I've noticed how sensitive I was.
Mm.
You know, when you can be sensitive to love or light, it's a lot easier than being sensitive to the pain and this fighting, you know.
Uh-huh.
So my sensitivity was welcome. And I would say that when I was, let's see, what happened? I met this man and he said to me, he said, Alaya, would you like to meet your shadow? And
Mm.
I'm a warrior, I'm a spiritual warrior. Yeah. And I said, absolutely. And he gave me this session. And in this session, he brought me to a place, Chiyoko, where I saw myself with my foot on a little coffin. It's like a pine little box.
Okay.
And I had a gun, a machine gun, and I
Okay.
was shooting people. And I couldn't believe that I could witness within myself something that I had always judged and feared about my
Yeah,
father.
yeah.
And it took me, oh my gosh, it just shattered my heart. So I would say for 3 years, I felt numb.
Huh.
I felt like I just wanted to rock myself and console
From the
myself.
maybe the confronting or the seeing of the shadow. Maybe that was
Yes.
hidden somewhere, so tucked in the dark,
Yes.
locked closet of the subconscious. And when you
Yes.
saw that part of you that maybe either thinks those thoughts or has something connection to it, that was what was devastating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is powerful. I mean, sometimes it's the most evolutionary work when we face that shadow. It's the truth. It doesn't mean we are that,
No.
but it is a truth and how to reconcile with that. So 3 years of what I'd imagine might have been trying to reconcile with that.
Yes.
Okay.
It was extremely intense. And I asked this man, I said, please help me resolve this. And he said to me, Alea, I told you I could show you your shadow, but I did not tell you I could fix it.
Like, I want a refund. This was not part of the deal. You're just gonna leave you hanging. I mean, okay. So then did you, I mean, I don't want to guess here. Tell me, what did you do then?
I I met a friend and we started to travel and I learned how to
Mhm.
make jewelry, feather jewelry and crystals. And it was like a healing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Thailand, ended up in Thailand, and we're in the land of Buddha. And I really turned, I said, please, Buddha, please help me. I said, I just can't bear this pain.
Yeah.
And we joined a motorcycle trek and we were traveling with some incredible people and we were going to a temple.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that at this temple, this was the answer to my prayer. And
Okay.
once,
Okay.
yeah, once we arrived at this temple, I jumped off the back of the motorcycle and I ran ahead of everyone. And there was Anatta. And he was standing here. He was the temple master.
Okay.
And he waved to me. He said, hello, hello, come have tea with me. And then he saw the entourage, said, and bring your friends too.
Reluctantly, yes.
So he told me that he knew my soul,
Wow.
that he wanted to help me, and he would give me a place to stay and take care of all my needs. And he did.
Wow. Anata became
Anatta.
this teacher, kind of this sounds like an incubation almost of transformation.
Yes, he gave me a place to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he held space for me, I know.
Wow.
Totally held space for me in this resolution of what
Yep.
I needed to do.
Right.
It's beautiful, huh?
Wow. And you knew that was coming. It's interesting that your
Yes.
intuition was that online, that you were
Yes.
hopping, skipping, and jumping from a motorbike saying, this is where it's going to be.
Yes.
Did you know it was going to come in the form of a spiritual man who would become the teacher? You just knew something.
I knew I was there.
You know, and I think tuning into our own intuition, which is, again, so many things we could speak about or we can, with that awakening that you already had. And it's just to be able to trust our own intuition and not know where the path is going. And sometimes feel like, really? That path? Like, are you sure I want to go that way? But you have a feeling that if you
Yeah.
keep going on that path, there's something there. And sometimes that's all you need.
Yes.
It's just to keep going. So you're there with this teacher of yours who knew you at a soul level,
Yes.
right? And what was that like, or how does that contribute to you today?
Well, of course, I was already meditating. I went from
Mhm.
3 to 4 hours at the very beginning. And by the time after 6 weeks, I was up to 7, 8 hours a day
Wow.
meditating.
Okay.
This was not about bliss. This was about going inside and
Yep.
facing whatever it was that I needed to face. So there was a time in the cave when I was meditating, and there was an image. I was brave enough to re-look at that image of me
Mm-hmm.
with
With the gun.
a gun shooting people that were
Mm-hmm.
moving towards me. And I stood before this young
Yeah.
woman and
Yeah.
I looked into her eyes. This was so big because I looked into her eyes and I saw
Yeah.
her fear. I saw her purity
Yeah.
and I saw her confusion. And I was there for her. And I stood until there was a deep connection and understanding. And she came and she just melted into my arms.
Wow.
And then I feel like that was the piece that was missing, the trust in the part that was so wounded that I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't touch,
Yep.
that I couldn't accept.
That's the reconciliation is the maybe I don't know if it's the coming back to the oneness or wholeness, but this is just what I'm feeling as you're saying this. But it's realizing that that oneness and wholeness was always there, and there was not a separation of like, well, that's my ugly dark self, and that's separate than who I am. This I'm going to be light, and I'm going to be my higher self. Actually, we are the yin yang together.
Yes.
We are the melding of our light side and our dark side, and just to have peace with that, though. I think
And
many
to
people
love her.
they struck right in peace, and then that love. I mean, this is all like next level, next level, next level, and to have it be sincere, not this like I know I should love this part of myself, but I really don't. But I know I should, so I'm going to say that I do. But to really have this deep compassion and love, yeah. And so this happened in Thailand,
In
then.
Thailand.
Okay.
What Tum Tab Tao?
Okay, what's that? Is that the name? Is that that's the temple? Oh my gosh! And for those who might be curious and know Thailand, what island were you on, or where in Thailand was
It was
this?
close to Burma on the northern part
Okay,
of Thailand.
okay, wow. And so, tell me, where does this go from there? What next chapter?
Oh, there's one more piece in this that was
Okay,
really
refill your popcorn. The movie keeps going. Like, let's go.
So I embraced her
Mm-hmm.
and I loved her.
Yeah.
And then I remembered the box and I go, I have to open the box. What
Okay.
is the box? And I opened it and it was a baby. It was a child with these eyes that were just as big as stars.
Now, is this the box that her foot was on? You're saying this
Yes.
part of you with the gun and this sort of visualization. Her foot was on a box. I remember you said that, and
Yes.
in that box was a baby.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
And
Keep
this
going.
truly was my purity.
Oh my gosh.
How fragmented I was and compartmentalized so that I wasn't whole.
And the innocent, I just have goosebumps. The innocent purity of a baby, of a child, is in
Yes.
every single person, no
Absolutely.
matter what you've done in life or you're thinking in life and who you are. We all have that innocence. I feel at our core,
Yeah.
there is that pure light inside every person. Some folks, it's very layered, very complicated, very covered up, and that's the work.
Yes.
So
And
you
it's
found
taken.
that wholeness.
It's taken, but I found it back. And
Yeah.
I remember at the end of that day, I was just so still, and I thought, I am going to be my own divine mother. I am going to find my children and all the parts of myself, and I am going to bring them home to my heart.
Yep.
And that has been my work. That was the beginning of my work here.
Can you share that one more time? Not to put you in the spot for a repeat here, but if you can just say that once more to me.
Yes. I decided
Yes.
to be my own divine mother, to find my children that had been wounded and the parts of myself that I had not been able to accept or find, and to bring them all home to my heart so that we could live together and be one.
Yes.
No separation.
It's beautiful. Very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. And it's such a personal story, but I feel now that I know more pieces of your story, wow, does that actually help me understand more deeply what is that essence I feel from you? That's the essence. And I've said this to other people. I'm like, why do we always smile more when we're around Alaya? Like, what is that? What is that? And I feel, and I'm just very loose with the language here, right? Some people might not identify with these words, but I feel like we all can be the support or the mothering, the home. We can all be home for each other. I mean, we are all one. That's really at its essence, having individual experiences, it feels like, but there is this oneness. And perhaps the way I would say I feel is like you ignite that, the unity, the remembering of the unity. That's what it is, the remembering that it is all united, and you can help people remember that love that they have in themselves
Yes.
and help them nurture that. Yes. Wow.
And to understand their traumas
Mm-hmm.
and to really be so compassionate that we can truly forgive our mothers and our fathers.
Yeah.
By being so honest and so authentic,
Yeah.
and on that inner dialogue from our hearts when we reach out to each other, it is so deeply healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like until we completely love our mothers and our fathers and can embrace them with no judgment, just pure love,
Yes.
then we can start our work.
Yes.
Until then, we are totally distracted.
I was going to say you're a little bit, it's like being off key, right? If the
Yes.
piano's off key, you can play the notes, but it's just the whole thing's going to be off.
Yes.
And so I appreciate this is what you're sharing. Like that's kind of the foundation, it sounds like. Now, would you say that's a big part of the foundation of what you call heart-centered therapy? Or is this just part of like your universal philosophy? Like, or can you even separate, like, what is heart-centered therapy?
Well, I could share with you.
Yes.
I from those basic foundations,
Mm-hmm.
I created like a whole protocol,
Okay.
step by step, how
Yes.
we can move through levels of consciousness
Yes.
and really come back from pain, suffering, judgment, back to wholeness and love.
Yeah. And I know I've heard you say, and also on the website, I've read this too, and it makes a lot of sense. When we connect more deeply to the wisdom of our hearts, we're able to raise consciousness.
Yes.
And that's the essence
Yes.
right there. And so if you would like to, I'd love to share more about what are some of these things that we can do to connect to that wisdom.
Let me share with you what a session looks like so that you
Okay.
can understand
Yes,
what I
please.
do.
Yes.
I like to tell this story about a woman. Her name is Annie, and she had cancer, a melanoma. And she was a school teacher, and she was devastated because she had a sensitivity
Okay.
to the children that she was, who were her students,
Yeah.
because she could feel who was being abused. And it
Wow.
was really troubling her, and she was so stressed.
Yeah.
And her older son wanted to go in the military, and her younger son was on drugs. And she
Oh.
was,
Mm-hmm.
she was at the limit of what she could
Yeah.
take. And
Yeah.
then she gets news she has cancer. So that's an important foundation, and all those factors are a part
Yes.
of the disease. Right?
Yes.
So what we do is that we actually go into the melanoma, into the cancer, and we get the emotion.
Yeah.
And when we create a dialogue with that by giving it eyes, so that we get an understanding of the consciousness of what's behind the cancer, what's the story, what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw beautiful, sweet, innocent eyes. And when she started to connect with them, she said, "Oh, I don't really need to connect to those eyes. They've been there for so long that they don't need me. They're just fine the way they are." And I knew that this was the break in the consciousness and being able to make that important connection to the trauma.
Okay.
So I asked her how old the eyes were, and she said, "Oh my gosh, Alaya, I always knew that something happened to me when I was 3 years old." And she started to cry. And the memory came back that she had been incested by her father.
Wow.
She's 3 years old. 3 seems to be a big number. And her mother came in and she witnessed this. And of course, she was so upset that her father left that day. Annie never saw her father again. So if you could imagine the unresolved trauma, that there is no way that that child could process that information or that level of pain and loss.
Yes.
And that was the source of the cancer.
For this woman, had she never remembered that instance until this session with you?
She couldn't remember.
Wow.
She's
Okay. So something was open enough for her to go in there in the work with you,
yes.
to bring that to the surface because it needed to be surfaced. Okay. So please continue.
So what we did is because her father was the source of the trauma and
Yeah.
that unresolved emotion, what we did is that we supported Annie to be safe, to connect to her adult self, to her little girl. And of course, this is the child that she's really trying to help, right?
Wow.
She thinks it's in the schoolyard, but it's within her. So she connects to that little girl and she finds a resource of love and safety.
Yeah.
She brings in her angel. And when she's strong enough, she looks at her father. And when she looks into his eyes, what she saw was perversion and confusion.
Mm.
Now, what we do is when you see that, you can see that he's holding that somewhere in his body.
Yeah.
And we can see that that energy and that consciousness is making him behave outside of his true character. And therefore, when she was able to see that, you could imagine if you just set that aside and you could see Father for the purity of who he truly is.
Right.
And not have that standing between you, the myth, really, and
Which can be all encompassing. Sometimes,
absolutely.
depending where we are, all we see is the myth.
That's right.
And we don't actually believe. Our mind shuts off to the possibility that there is any type of goodness, a light, a soul behind that, because that, or the myth or the experience is that powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we lose each other.
Mm-hmm.
Once we make the judgment, once we see them in a certain light, we never see each other again. And this is so important.
Yeah.
You can love someone and then you have somebody says something horrible about them, and all you see is that horrible image and picture, and you lose each other.
Yes. And if I can ask just to have a visual here, because I feel I'm so in this woman's story and your sharing of the experience. This is a one-on-one session with her, right? And so is she laying down with her eyes closed or in a chair? And is she in some sort of meditative state to have the memory come back? Or is that so particular for each person it might not be worth describing, for the context of this interview?
She was laying down with a pillow, comfortable, and a soft blanket.
Okay. And through speaking with her, and
Speaking.
is your methodology also hands-on, or is it energetic, a bit more Reiki, and you don't have physical touch, but you're 6 to 8 inches away?
No, it's about helping her anchor into her heart so that she leaves her mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that she leaves. So let me share with this real
Yes.
quick. If I'm in my heart, I'm here.
Yeah.
If I go into my mind, I'm going to be up here and I'm going to start talking about heart-centered therapy, and it's going to be a totally different presentation. Now, if I'm with Kathy or Annie and she's on the table and I'm from here, she's never going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like a whole different person just came out for the interview. I'm so glad the other one was here the whole time.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And
Mind?
I'm the same way. I need to have this experience because I very much, it's still an edge for me to go into the mind and the mind.
Your nervous system.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful because it's actually helping me reflect and imagine people watching this video. We all know this. Who is the persona? Who is the performance for? What's the costume? What's the attitude? What's the expectation that we think that we need to meet to speak in a certain way? And that's not the easefulness. Yeah.
It's everything.
And so you're having her drop all of that.
Yes.
Drop everything I just described. And what's left? It's like, oh, that's the innocence and the purity of soul.
And that's the deepness, the softness, the breath changes, the mind rests. The mind rests and the heart takes over. The heart becomes the guide and the navigator.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the heart, when it's a directive, it absolutely always wants to have oneness and love.
Okay.
It's its goal.
Yes.
It's always trying to bring that.
Yeah,
to
it's
fruition.
the automatic state.
Yes.
That is the state. That's a natural state.
Right.
That'll always gravitate back to.
And the mind wants us to stay where we are.
Okay.
Because it believes this is what we have to do to stay safe, because we've always been safe.
Yes. It's a protection mechanism.
Yes.
Yeah. Which kind of sucks sometimes. It's not doing the opposite of what it's supposed to. Why are we so complex? Anyway,
Yes.
all these things. So this woman, this is amazing breakthrough is what I would call it. Like just this is radical new territory that she's not surfaced before, childhood trauma. And you were saying she had a lot of things in life that were radically challenging, the cancer, the
Yes.
sensitivity to children that she
Yes.
cared about deeply, that were experiencing abuse and more things. And so this work that you're doing with her, if you can share a bit of where did it go from
Where does
there
it
for
go from
her?
there?
Yeah.
So what we could see once we could recognize this
Uh-huh.
energy, this deceptive energy or dissonant energy, we could see where it went into her body,
Yeah.
and it went in through her mouth and to the back of her heart, where the cancer was.
That's where the cancer
That's
was.
where the cancer was.
Okay.
So this is a direct
Yeah.
energy that was transferred. So once we were able to see that,
Mm-hmm.
what we could do is that we could track it. She's
Yeah.
holding it, her father's holding it. But where did he get that energy from?
Ooh.
His father.
Yes, the lineage.
The lineage.
Uh-huh.
And then we went back into the lineage.
Okay.
And she said, "Oh, Alaya, I can't do that." She said, I don't, I don't even know my ancestors.
Yeah.
And we just go into that place of heart. We go into that place of trust, and the visuals start to come.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Oh, Alaya, I see a horse. I see a horse. Oh, there's many horses. It's an army."
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So her ancestor was in an army. He goes into a village with this army, rapes, pillages, and burns. So if you could imagine
Yeah.
the suffering of the ones in the village, how what they had to witness,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Yet at the same time, the men in this army were
Yeah.
also holding the experience, and it's not acceptable to their soul. And the woundedness,
Yes.
the pain of having to experience that and know that that is who you are, or who we believe that's who
Yes.
we are, which is absolutely not the truth.
Yep.
Once we're able to look at that,
Yeah.
she was able to meet that ancestor and to help him to see that his pain and his decision against himself was being passed down to everyone in her family, including her father, and she was holding it. Now, the violence that was passed, that violence, she was holding it, yet the violence is an enactment against herself because it's now killing her.
And as a reminder, or let me just check in, before this work with you, she had no
Absolutely.
recollection, understanding, even felt sense of like, oh, there must be something 3 generations back. Many people don't.
No.
It seems so impossible to some folks who aren't familiar with this work. When you first come into this ancestral lineage clearing, or maybe even past life regression, whatever the right vocabulary is for your work, it's hard for people to wrap their heads around sometimes. And they think, really, can that possibly be true? But I feel in so many different philosophies and healing modalities of very different lineages, healing lineages, ancestral trauma is
Yes.
absolutely a powerful factor. And if no one has looked into their ancestral trauma, I'm just saying there's a there, and there's something that probably could be released. Everyone's story is so unique.
Yes.
And so she was doing this work, and you're helping her. And how did she struggle to make sense of what she was seeing, or did it just feel true to her?
It felt true to her.
Yeah.
And her heart was so engaged.
Yeah.
And in how I would guide her was to see her ancestor representing the soldiers and another spokesperson for the villagers, a woman, to represent, right?
Wow. Okay.
How powerful is that? The
So
pain of the
talk about a reconciliation and
Yes.
a peacemaking, and oh my
Yes.
gosh, yeah, because it is not for us to hold the responsibility or guilt or shame of our ancestors' actions,
Right.
but there is something there that we can help clear
Yes.
and come back to that place of love and compassion. Yeah.
It's so powerful, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So in this meeting, when this soldier and this woman met, they were able to apologize,
Yeah.
to acknowledge the pain that the villagers suffered.
Yeah.
And the villagers were able to acknowledge the pain, that this was not something that they
Mhm.
chose to do,
Mm-hmm.
that this was something that they were enrolled and forced to do.
Yeah.
And in that, there was a great release. And it was so beautiful because all the soldiers put down their weapons
Mm-hmm.
and wept.
Mm-hmm.
And then the villagers
Yeah.
supported them and held them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this incredible,
Yeah.
deep union of love
Yeah.
and forgiveness.
There's so much that goes on outside of our personal experience in this linear timeline of our lifetimes.
Uh-huh.
And there is so much clearing that can be done. And in some other work I've done, it sounds like there's this metaphor of like sometimes all you have to do is just pull it one thread and it clears. You know, if in a hem of a shirt, you pull it one thread and all of a sudden the whole thing just unravels.
Yeah.
Like, oh, where did that just go? But just one.
You have to have the right thread.
And to be able to unlock that. Otherwise, that stitching could be just locked.
Yes.
And it doesn't budge. But once you do it, it doesn't mean like, oh, now we have to live in the pain of every villager and every soldier and every whatever. No, depending how the work's done. If you could share with me, like what level of, how do you describe it? Was it a clearing that she felt or a release or what
It
was that?
A huge release. And what we were able to do was to have this soldier acknowledge what he was holding and have every ancestor to
Mhm.
awaken
Yeah.
that this was not any of them,
Right.
that they were all holding something, and somehow it becomes bonding.
Yeah.
This is what we know. This is love,
Yeah.
right? This is relationship. This is family.
Wow.
So once they're able to do that, and there's an agreement that everybody wants to release this energy, they did.
Wow.
So she was able to release it from her body first. Everybody was able to follow.
Yeah.
We did a dialogue that would be a little bit longer to
Yeah.
embrace right now, but she was able to clear it.
Wow. And did this all happen in one session's work, or is this, and I know we're speaking about one particular individual, everybody's
Yes.
very different,
Yes.
where they are, like everyone's
Yeah.
very different, but is it typically a single session that's long and powerful or multiple sessions for the one-on-one work? And then I want to come to it, but how are you able to help people in a group setting do some of this? So we'll talk about the groups in a moment, but is it multiple sessions typically?
This was one session for her.
Wow.
She
Okay.
was ready to do it and not hold on or
Okay.
resist.
Mhm.
That makes all the difference.
It really does.
You know, it's like, no, I don't want to give that up.
It's like leading the horse to water. It's like you could stand there for a long time. That horse is not drinking the water. You can't do anything to make it.
Yes,
So,
right.
okay.
But we have insight to our resistance, and it might go slower, but it does
Yeah.
go.
Okay.
It does go.
And how did she then translate that into her life and these struggles, these very difficult struggles she was facing, like the
Yeah.
cancer, for
Yes,
example?
This was amazing. So the cancer, she went for another checkup.
Okay.
It was no longer malignant. It
Wow.
was not. So that was handled. And I have to share with you, Chiyoko, because this was interesting. In her family, you have to look at her mother was representing the village.
Okay.
And the mother witnessed the violation
Mhm,
as the
mhm.
mothers in
Yeah.
the village witnessed.
Yes. Yes.
So, and the father was representing the warriors, the soldiers.
Okay.
So now it's in her house.
Yeah.
She's been violated by the soldier. The mother has witnessed it.
Yes.
Right. So this is
I
holographically
didn't
playing out in the family.
think of that. Okay, yes. This is the holograph. Exactly. It's like the not resurrection, but the recreation.
Yes.
The recreation of the story. And this is what happened. It loops.
Yes.
The patterns loop. Okay, yes. Tell me more. Uh-huh.
I said this at the beginning because you have to realize that the older boy wants to go into the service,
Okay.
right? To become the soldier,
Yes.
to enact that again.
This is her son
Yeah,
to keep playing out. Mhm,
And the other
mhm.
one is drinking and using drugs, like the soldier. He turned to alcohol
Yeah.
and just lost his life. So everything is there
Mm-hmm.
holographically
Yeah.
again
Okay.
in perfect mirroring.
And these are the patterns that will keep repeating themselves in some way. There's movies that are made about this. I mean, it's the truth. Is it theater? Is it life? And so the language I would use is like she was able to break an ancestral lineage pattern and maybe have a reset. And I know it's not that easy as snapping your fingers, but
It's possible.
so the cancer was on its way out. How else did some of this work show up in her life to help?
She stopped being a school teacher and she started to paint.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So she was just taking care of herself.
Yeah.
I don't know if she went back, but she went to see her father for the first time. And oh my gosh, she was probably in her 40s then. And he was very broken. But she got to see her father.
And that's the piece with your parents that you were
Yes,
speaking about
yes,
earlier. That's the foundational level of one of the foundational things for true healing is the peace and forgiveness to
yes,
our parents. Okay.
yes. It was
Wow.
beautiful. And she hadn't talked to her brothers in 10 years. She reconnected to her brothers.
Yep.
And all her relationships changed within her family. And I didn't follow up too many years
Yes.
after, but you know,
But
she
you heard
was,
some of this as time
yes.
went on. Okay.
And he didn't go into the service. So
Oh, the son
yeah,
didn't. The son didn't.
no. So you
Okay.
can imagine it's
Yep.
huge, huge loss.
I feel it even from sitting here, because it's interesting to feel the story because we're in person. I know a lot does translate over video. I also feel that if people have had similar, very powerful spiritual work for physical healing, know that connection, they're going to get what you're talking about. For those who haven't quite gone there and experienced that, it's a bit much to intellectualize, but I think it's because we can't fully intellectualize what's happening in this like scientific, proven, exactly the data is showing spirit is truth. And when you feel that and you do work with people who can work with spirit, these are my words, you work
Yes,
with spirit,
yes,
people feel the truth in it.
yes,
And they stop needing to like, well, what did the clinical studies say about that? Having the exact
yes,
facts. It's like, no, you feel truth. And that's where I think so much healing can come from.
yes.
Is just your soul feels the wisdom. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
I don't know if we have time, but for one more thing,
Sure, yes.
you can always cut it.
No, keep going.
Long ago, I was meditating and I heard that there is one thought that is the source of all disease.
Okay.
And I thought, I listened, and I heard that one thought is, I am not loved.
Oh.
And if we believe that we are not loved, then we lose our self worth, we lose our trust in life, and we feel that we have been abandoned and alone because we're not loved.
Right.
So these are like, they become platforms upon which we build our lives and our thoughts. And we don't question them. We don't look at them.
Yep.
So if we're looking at something with an open heart, waiting for more light to come into the images, they start to transform.
Yep.
And these thoughts are so potent. And these are the thoughts that we work with in our work. Because this is what traps us.
Yes.
And if we believe that, then we're collecting all kinds of thoughts from all over the world to enforce that, to validate.
Oh, it's just stacking.
Yes. And then we're entrapped.
Yep.
So
I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you for sharing that. We're definitely not removing that from this conversation because for me, it takes it one step further for people to start to understand, okay, what's actually changing in me? And often we don't even know what needs to be changed. We don't know these preconditioned mindsets, right? That need to be picked at and then unraveled and come through. And we don't realize how many thought patterns stack up and stack up. There's just something that's not quite right.
And then experience happens. We get hurt. We go, see, that's true.
The validation. Oh, the layers.
And the pain becomes our validation.
Yep.
So we keep having experiences that prove that this is the truth.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, I will say I feel that there's so much depth to this work. Thank you for sharing all of this. We're not quite done yet, but thank you for sharing all this. And I do sense that in your description and like the heartfelt details that you shared, it's such a good sense of, okay, what's going on here? But I know there's so much more we could talk about. And I know there are such a variety of
my goodness,
experiences and modalities with your work, with other people and all the things. But I will say, so kind of coming back or maybe rounding out the conversation with a few more thoughts that I
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
about this health and wellness retreat for October of this year in Vilcabamba, where you live. And I mentioned you've been here, but you're with your husband, part of the Vilcabamba community. And there are many people who are practitioners of different modalities and yoga teachers and massage
Oh my
therapists.
gosh.
Such an array of folks, so many of whom are really excited for this October retreat. If you could describe a little bit about what is it about Vilcabamba? Because I think there's a real magic that's here that attracts the type of people and the type of healing, clearing, and personal journey that can happen specifically in Vilcabamba. How does that feel to you? What is your experience of this town, this village that we're in?
Well, I came here not knowing anything about Vilcabamba,
Hmm.
except that it was a safe haven filled with heartful people that were alive, awake, and wanting to be in community. That was about all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And I was totally inspired. I was totally meant to be here. And I feel like coming here, you cannot believe the wisdom that is here, the resources, the intelligence, the scientists, the healers, I mean, through the whole spectrum
Yes.
of life.
Variety.
We have it here.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we all have our part to play. And that we are a microcosm of what is happening in the world. And we are setting precedents for possibilities of how we can move through these times
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to create a foundation of love that we build upon, to know that love is more important than diversity, and that
Mm.
if we have diversity, we can work out our differences.
Yep.
And this is what I feel that my heart is holding, healing, and knowing that we can come together as a community in a way that I didn't know was possible. I didn't know that I could have friends on this level, and the experiences that we have.
Yeah.
And I always want to go to everybody's workshop just because I want to know what they do. I was like, and support them.
Same.
It's like,
Mhm.
what? Are you kidding? This is amazing. You're fabulous people.
Yep. And we all lift each other up energetically too, because we're around like-minded, like-hearted people.
Yes.
And that really lands with me. And I believe it's been 2 to 3 years that you've been here, right?
2.5 now.
Okay. And so you've lived many other places. You've been doing this kind of work for a very long time.
Yeah.
Your husband's a talented practitioner as well, as we've mentioned. You've been in other communities. You've
Yeah.
had other peer circles. You've had other places to exist. And I can feel the essence of you saying this is a particularly special place, Vilcabamba.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Well, my life in Arizona was we would be home and we travel. We travel 9 months out of the year and we're home
Okay.
3 months.
Uh-huh.
So my community was with the people that we've worked with, all the practitioners. We worked with them for years and we had friendships
Yeah.
and love and fun, but it was always based around, our work.
Right.
But this is different. I get to sit back and like go, wow, you are awesome.
And it's all the villagers. There's the whole cast of characters, I always say, in this village. There really is. And that brings me joy. I sometimes look at people, I'm like, we are so different, but man, do I like you. Like you're cool and you're fun. And it's just, I think the walks of life that people have had and there's an attractor field to coming here. And we're excited to open this up. And that's why for our October retreat, it's 21 days, which is a significant amount of time.
That's big.
That's the amount where true change is able to be made. So studies have said you break habits, you build new ones. But I think the energetic container to be immersed in Vilcabamba for 21 days to get to know some of the other people, not just, you're going to meet a lot of people through the retreat, but you're going to meet other people too.
I can say that since we've been in the Andes and there are mountains all around us, I have deepened and learned more in the last 2.5 years than than all my foundational work.
Wow.
And I can really say that something is going on here, and it's deep, it's supportive. This is where I want to do my spiritual work.
Profound.
This is it.
Whew, very profound. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've covered so many amazing topics in this. If you have other questions or comments, feel free to like it below or write down below. Anyone who's watching this, and thank you so much for the time. This has been beautiful. And I don't want to wrap up too quickly without at least offer you an opportunity if you feel like there's anything else that you would like to share that's on your mind or heart related to your work, Vilcabamba, the retreat. And sometimes I tease up asking folks, if you had one message to broadcast to the entire world, what would that message be? I feel like I know what that might be from our conversation, but
Oh my goodness. I was asking myself that question this morning, and
mm,
it took me into so many places. But I would say that what I would say and what I hold is that know that you are the holder of your own truth. Do not accept imposed thought without checking it, feeling it, and asking yourself, is this something I want to take into my consciousness and live? Question everything. And when you feel inside your heart, begin to birth more of your own authenticity and your own thought and vision. We have to do this. It has to be birthed from inside of us, because what is coming towards us, what is directed at us, is something that I stand and watch.
thank you for that. We must create our own protection fields. And the programming, the layers we talked about. I felt there's a question. We need to constantly be examining and doing this work as an ongoing basis. It's not, oh, I went to a session and I did the workshop and whatever it might be. No, the work doesn't end there. There's an active approach that we can take from that to keep clearing our own fields. Thank you for that. Such words of wisdom, Alaya. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
So much fun. All of our conversations. This was absolutely no exception. I learned so much. And I think folks watching this, you have a lot to look forward to when we see you down here in Vilcabamba. And I will also say, again, make sure you hit the subscribe button, you like this content, and the bell, because there's so many other amazing conversations and interviews we'll be having with Abundant Living Ecuador. So until next time, thank you once again. Appreciating you so much. And having fun. Absolutely.
Oh,
I always welcome hugs, especially from you.
Oh, thank you.
Isn't she the best? It's the best. Wait till you get a hug like that in person. You're not going to leave Vilcabamba. Thank you. All right. Adios, everyone. Ciao for now.